Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. So here we are, episode 3450. It's weird. I look at it and I think to myself, oh, it's halfway to 3500, but I mean, not really. It's more like it's halfway to 7900 episodes. I don't know, but it still feels like a little bitty milestone. So I'm very grateful to have reached it and very grateful that you are joining me for it. So we are talking about Jedi Fallen Order. We have been for the last little while. This is installment 9 in our story breakdown, and we're talking about the Order 66 flashback that happens while Cal is on Dathomir. We find out that young Cal Kestis and his master Jor Tapal were on a mission to Braca. Makes perfect sense, I guess, when you think about it. And the mission had just been completed. They were going to be heading to Magito when Order 66 comes down. Now, Cal is in the middle of a training exercise. He's supposed to get from this little room up to the command station position where Master Tapal is, and he makes it up there. And just as he does, we see the clone commander that's there in the room behind him get the little message from Palpatine, and he starts to raise his blaster, and in the meantime, Jor Tapal has kind of a reaction of like a woo, like a woozy thing, like he gets the whole situation with Mace Windu and Anakin falling to the dark side, all that stuff, right? And then senses the clone commander raising his blaster, lightsaber on, wham, like stabs him, that's it. Young Cal Kestis is, of course, shocked by this turn of events, wants to know what happened, why did the guy just turn his blaster on Master Tapal, and Jorah says, yeah, no time to explain, we got to get out of here. We have to get to the escape pods, like you use maintenance tunnels, I'll create a distraction, and so the mission proceeds, so it's a playable situation where you have to go through various things, you know, force push and pull to get through these maintenance halls and whatnot. You hear clone comms where they say that Master Tapal has taken out multiple squads over the course of this mission, so he is some serious player as far as the Jedi go. Then there's a moment where young Cal is kind of exposed and a couple of stormtroopers show up, and you remember the scene in A New Hope when Luke and Leia arrive at that precipitous drop, but Luke has kind of blasted the bridge controls and there are stormtroopers shooting from across the other side, right? Well, it's a similar kind of idea. There are stormtroopers shooting from a random location, and they shoot at Cal. They get close enough to him where he falls and his lightsaber drops into the abyss. Thankfully, Jor Tapal shows up on that other platform and kills the clone troopers. And Jorah's like, your lightsaber, like, you know, we'll talk about this later, brr, like, keep going. So they get to the escape pods, but unfortunately at that point, they are overwhelmed by clones. Master Tapal gets shot multiple times and they are barely able to escape, thanks to Cal, who in his, you know, rage and frustration and fear and all that stuff just gives a huge, like, force, like sends a wave of force energy at these clones. It's a slow situation. So, you know, the whole thing about being able to hit somebody with a force slowing thing, kind of similar to what Kylo Ren does to Poe Dameron at the beginning of The Force Awakens, like that freezing thing, and he does it to Rey also, but it's only a slowing thing for Cal. Anyway, he's able to get himself and Master Tapal onto the escape pod, and they launch away. Then, with his dying words, Master Tapal tells Cal to trust only in the Force and gives him his lightsaber. So now Cal is carrying Master Tapal's lightsaber. He also tells him, just prior to that, that he set the reactors to overload on the ship, so it's going to cover their escape, basically. So the escape pod lands on Braca, and Cal has been stranded on Braca for 5 years by the time we meet him at the beginning of Jedi Fallen Order. So that's where the backstory situation happens. Now, the other part of the story that happens on Dathomir has to do with what the Night Sisters do. And again, Seer tried to warn Cal that this was a possibility, and he was like, yeah, no problem, I got it. But masters of illusion and deception and manipulation and whatnot. So Cal has a situation where he encounters Master Tapal, or at least thinks he encounters Master Tapal, and Master Tapal has some terrible things to say about Cal, that he's weak, that his weakness is what caused Master Tapal to die. basically all these terrible thoughts that young Cal had for himself when he had that incredibly traumatic experience. And like the flashback ends with him just huddled in the escape pod and the exploding clone ship. I can't even remember what you would call those, the Venator cruisers, right? Like the explosion is shaking the escape pod and he's just curled up in a ball screaming. It's really dramatic and terrifying in its way. So then getting back to the illusion, what ultimately happens is that Cal stabs the illusion version of Master T'Pol, and Master T'Pol is like, yeah, that's right, my blood is on your hands, apprentice, and you're, a weakling and a failure and a traitor and you're no Jedi. And they get into this like grip match over the lightsaber, and Cal has a very Star Warsy no moment, and that breaks the illusion. But what was real about it was that the lightsaber is damaged to the point where it can no longer be used. It's at that point that Cal leaves the Sage's tomb, and the Wanderer, aka Terran Malicus, is out there going, see, I told you it was bad in there. And then Baron shows up, and drama with her and Terran and the Night Sister zombies, and Cal having no lightsaber to help defend himself, having to beat feet to the Mantis. Then has a conversation with Seer on the Mantis. He's just utterly and completely shaken up. She says, we're gonna get you to build a new lightsaber. That's how you start to come back from this whole experience. And she also gives us another piece of her backstory, the fact that when the Imperials brought Trilla in to her while she was being tortured, and when Seer saw that Trilla had been turned to the dark side, that something just utterly broke in Seer, and that she tapped into the dark side, and that she killed everybody in the room, with the exception of Trilla, of course. And that's the reason that she had cut herself off from the Force, because of her dipping into the dark side in this particular situation. So yeah, hopefully her journey will include her finally reconnecting with the Force as well. But for now, they are going to go on a mission to Ilum to get another Kyber crystal and rebuild a lightsaber, give Cal his own lightsaber, and start on the path to healing for himself. And that's where we're going to leave things with this episode of the podcast. If you like this podcast, if you enjoy it, the best thing you could honestly do would be to spread the word. If you could tell one fan, two fans, however many friends who like Star Wars and like podcasts, that you are enjoying this particular podcast, I would greatly appreciate that. Please share and share alike. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this podcast episode, as always. And may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyrighted by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.